The stars above Earth had never seemed so threatening. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the EDS Valiant, watching the alien fleet materialize at the edge of the solar system. There were hundreds of them, their ships massive and dark against the void of space. Each vessel was larger than anything humanity had ever built. The fleet moved with perfect coordination, like a school of predators circling their prey. Jake had been a naval officer for 30 years. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion and survived the Belt Wars. He thought he had seen everything. But this was different. This was first contact, and it was nothing like humanity had imagined. The communication came through on all channels simultaneously. Every screen on Earth, every radio, every device connected to any network suddenly displayed the same image. An alien face filled the displays, its features sharp and angular, with eyes that glowed a deep purple. The creature wore elaborate armor that seemed to shift colors in the light. Humans of Earth, the alien spoke, its voice translated instantly into every language on the planet. I am High Castellan Zarathek of the Vorathian Empire. Your species has been evaluated. Your world has been deemed suitable for incorporation into our empire. You have one choice to make, and you will make it now. Jake felt his hands grip the edge of his command console. Around the bridge, his crew had gone silent, watching the broadcast. Kneel before the Empire, Zarathek continued. Surrender your weapons, your fleets, and your sovereignty. Accept our rule, and your people will be allowed to live as subjects of the Vorathian state. You will work for us, serve us, and obey us. This is the mercy we offer to primitive species. The alien paused, letting the words sink in across the entire planet. Refuse, Zarathek said, and we will demonstrate what happens to those who defy the Empire. The transmission cut to an external view. Jake recognized the orbital stations around Mars Colony, humanity's furthest settlement, home to 50,000 people. The structures gleamed in the reflected sunlight, peaceful and unaware. Then the Vorathian ships fired. The weapons were unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Beams of pure energy lanced through space, striking the stations with surgical precision. There were no explosions, no fire in the vacuum. The stations simply ceased to exist, converted to vapor and debris in seconds. 50,000 lives gone in an instant. The transmission returned to Zarathek's face. You have 72 hours to surrender. If your leaders do not kneel before us by then, we will begin with your moon, then your orbital cities, then Earth itself. Choose wisely, humans. The Empire has conquered 147 species. All of them eventually knelt. You will be no different. The screens went dark. For a long moment, nobody on the bridge spoke. Then the communications officer broke the silence. Sir, we're receiving emergency broadcasts from every government on Earth. They're calling for an immediate meeting of the United Earth Council. Jake nodded slowly. Get me a secure line to President Carter, now. 2 hours later, Jake stood in the virtual conference room with leaders from every nation on Earth. President Linda Carter sat at the head of the table, her face drawn and pale. She had aged 10 years in the past 2 hours. Admiral Morrison, she said quietly, give us your assessment. Can we fight them? Jake looked around the table at the assembled leaders. He saw fear in their eyes, but also something else. Anger. Humanity had just taken its first step into a larger universe, and that universe had slapped them down like insects. Our fleet is no match for theirs, Jake said honestly. They have superior numbers, superior technology, and superior firepower. In a direct engagement, they would destroy us. Several leaders slumped in their chairs. One began to speak about surrender terms. However, Jake continued, his voice cutting through the despair. They're making assumptions about us. They think we're like the other species they've conquered. They think we'll break when they show us their strength. Won't we? Someone asked. Jake smiled grimly. I've studied every war in human history. You know what I've learned? Humans don't break easily. We adapt, we innovate. We find ways to win even when we shouldn't. These aliens have no idea what they're dealing with. President Carter leaned forward. What are you proposing, Admiral? I'm proposing we give them an answer they're not expecting, Jake said. I'm proposing we fight. The debate that followed lasted for 6 hours. Some leaders argued for surrender, believing it was the only way to save lives. Others argued for negotiation, hoping to buy time or find a compromise. But as the hours passed, a consensus began to form. No human government had ever knelt to a foreign power willingly. They had fought wars that lasted decades, sacrificed millions, burned their own cities rather than surrender them to invaders. That was the pattern of human history, written in blood and fire across every continent. Why would facing aliens be any different? In a research facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Paul Green was already at work. He had been developing experimental weapons for years, projects that other scientists called insane or impossible. Missiles that could dive through the sun's corona and weaponize stellar radiation, antimatter charges that could crack a moon in half, quantum disruptors that could tear apart the fabric of space itself. How long until they're operational? Jake asked him over a secure channel. Most of them aren't, Paul admitted. They're theoretical, untested, some of them might not even work. But some of them might. Paul grinned, and Jake saw the mad gleam of a scientist who had finally found a use for his most dangerous ideas. Oh, Admiral, some of them will definitely work. The question is whether we'll survive using them. Meanwhile, Captain Amy Sullivan was leading a reconnaissance flight near the alien fleet. Her fighter was small and fast. Using experimental stealth technology to avoid detection, she flew close enough to the enemy ships to scan their hull composition, their shield frequencies, their weapon placements. What she found was both encouraging and terrifying. The Varathian shields were powerful but operated on a fixed frequency. They were designed to stop energy weapons and kinetic projectiles traveling at predictable speeds. But Amy noticed something interesting. The shields didn't fully cover the ships. There were gaps near the engine ports, tiny vulnerabilities that the aliens probably thought were too small to matter. They build their ships like fortresses, Amy reported back to the Valiant. But every fortress has a weakness. We just need to be fast enough and crazy enough to exploit it. As the deadline approached, President Carter prepared to address the world. Jake stood beside her in the broadcast studio, wearing his dress uniform. Outside protests had erupted in every major city. Some people demanded surrender. Others demanded war. Most were simply terrified. Carter looked at Jake one last time before the cameras activated. "Are you sure about this, Admiral? Once I say the words, there's no going back." Jake thought about Mars Colony. He thought about the 50,000 people who had died without warning, without a chance to fight back or even say goodbye to their loved ones. He thought about humanity's long, bloody history of refusing to kneel no matter the cost. "I'm sure, Madam President," he said. "It's time to show these aliens what humans are made of." President Carter nodded and turned to face the cameras. Her voice was steady and clear as she addressed not just Earth but the alien fleet waiting at the edge of their solar system. "High Castellan Zarathek," she said, "you have made your demands and we have heard them. You have shown us your power and we acknowledge it. You have given us a choice and we have made our decision." She paused and Jake saw fire kindle in her eyes. "We will not kneel. We will not surrender. We will not become your subjects. If you want our world, you will have to take it from our dead hands. Come and try, alien." Earth answers your threats with a single word: no. The broadcast ended. Across the planet, air raid sirens began to wail. Ships launched from every spaceport, moving to form defensive positions. Weapons systems that had been dormant for decades powered up and aimed at the stars. In the command center of his flagship, Zarathek watched the human president's response with something resembling surprise. In his thousands of years of service to the Empire, he had never encountered a species that rejected the first offer of mercy. "Curious," he said to his subordinates. "Perhaps these humans require a more thorough demonstration." He gave the order, and the Varathian fleet began its approach to Earth. The war had begun, and neither side yet understood just how terrible it would become. The Varathian fleet moved through the solar system like a slow tide of destruction. Zarathek had ordered a measured advance, expecting the humans to panic and surrender once they saw the futility of resistance. Every other species had followed this pattern. First came defiance, then desperation, then finally the inevitable surrender. But the humans were not following the pattern. Admiral Jake Morrison watched the alien fleet approach on his tactical display. They moved in perfect formation, their larger ships at the center surrounded by screens of smaller vessels. It was textbook fleet doctrine, the kind of formation that had won 1,000 battles across the galaxy. Jake smiled. Textbook tactics meant predictable tactics. "All ships," he broadcast across the fleet channel, "engage pattern Delta. Let's show them how Earth fights." The human fleet scattered. Instead of forming a defensive line like the Varathians expected, Every ship broke formation and accelerated in different directions. Destroyers dove toward the sun, using its gravity to slingshot themselves at impossible speeds. Cruisers burned hard for the asteroid belt. Fighter squadrons split up and came at the enemy from a dozen different angles. On the bridge of his flagship, Zarathek watched this chaos with confusion. What are they doing? This is no battle formation. They have no discipline. His tactical officer studied the displays. They appear to be... I am not certain, Castellan. Their movements make no strategic sense. That was when the first missiles struck. Captain Amy Sullivan led her fighter squadron in a screaming dive through the Varathian fleet. Her ships were tiny compared to the alien vessels, barely larger than atmospheric aircraft. But they were fast and maneuverable, and they carried weapons that the Varathians had never encountered before. Release the wolves, Amy ordered, and her squadron launched their payloads. The missiles were old-fashioned by galactic standards. Chemical rockets with nuclear warheads, crude and simple. But they were covered in stealth coating and programmed with erratic flight paths. They twisted and jinked through space like living things, making them nearly impossible to target. The Varathians tried. Their point defense systems fired thousands of shots, destroying most of the missiles. But humanity had learned a crucial lesson from Amy's reconnaissance. The aliens fought with precision, not overwhelming force. Their systems were designed to stop specific threats traveling at specific speeds. 50 missiles got through. The nuclear explosions lit up the void of space. The Varathian shields absorbed most of the damage, but the sheer surprise of the attack disrupted their formation. Ships collided with each other trying to evade, communication channels filled with confused orders. Now, Jake commanded, and the rest of Earth's fleet struck. Commander Lucas Bennett led the stealth corvette division. His ships had been hiding in the shadow of Jupiter's moons, their systems powered down to minimum, waiting for this exact moment. Now they ignited their engines and burned toward the confused Varathian fleet at maximum acceleration. Lucas's ships carried Dr. Paul Green's latest creation, antimatter charges. Each one was no larger than a basketball, but contained enough destructive power to vaporize a city block. The problem was delivery. Antimatter was unstable and impossible to weaponize conventionally, so Paul had solved it in the most human way possible. He made suicide drones. The charges were attached to small automated craft that flew directly at Varathian ships. The aliens shot down most of them, but a few got through. When they detonated against the enemy hulls, the results were spectacular. One Varathian cruiser simply ceased to exist, torn apart at the molecular level. Another lost its entire port side, atmosphere venting into space along with hundreds of crew members. A third had its shields collapse, leaving it vulnerable to conventional weapons. All ships focus fire on the damaged cruiser, Jake ordered. I want that ship destroyed. Every human ship in range opened fire. Railgun slugs, laser beams, and plasma torpedoes converged on the wounded Varathian vessel. The aliens tried to cover it with other ships, but the damage was done. The cruiser broke apart, its reactor going critical and taking 2 nearby destroyers with it. It was the first major Varathian loss in the battle, and the psychological impact was immediate. Impossible, Zarathek whispered, watching one of his ships die. No primitive species should be able to... Castellan, his tactical officer interrupted. They are retreating. It was true. The human fleet was breaking off, scattering back into the solar system. They had struck hard and fast, then vanished before the Varathians could mount an effective counterattack. Pursue them, Zarathek ordered. I want them destroyed. But pursuing proved harder than expected. The humans knew their own solar system intimately. They used gravity wells, asteroid fields, and debris clouds to their advantage. Varathian ships that chased too aggressively found themselves ambushed by hidden human vessels or lured into weapon range of Earth's orbital defense platforms, the Battle of Jupiter's. Orbit came 3 days later. The Varathians had learned from their initial encounter and approached more cautiously. They brought their full fleet to bear against Earth's last major defensive position, a ring of military stations and shipyards orbiting Jupiter. Jake had known this moment would come. He had gathered every remaining combat-capable ship at Jupiter, knowing it would be a desperate last stand. The humans were outnumbered 10-1. This is it, he told his fleet. We hold them here or they reach Earth with their full strength. I won't lie to you. Most of us won't survive this. But our families are back home and they're counting on us to buy them time. He paused, looking at the faces on his screen, men and women from every nation on Earth, united in the face of extinction. So let's make these aliens pay for every meter of space. Let's make them remember this day for the rest of their empire's existence. For Earth! The response came back from 1,000 ships. For Earth. The battle was brutal and chaotic. The Varathians advanced in their perfect formations and the humans met them with fury and desperation. Ships rammed into each other when their weapons ran dry. Fighters made suicide runs against capital ships. Space stations self-destructed rather than let the aliens capture them intact. Amy Sullivan flew her fighter through a storm of weapons fire, her ship's hull scorched black from near misses. She had lost half her squadron in the first 10 minutes of combat. The rest followed her in a mad dive toward a Varathian dreadnought, the largest ship in their fleet. "This is suicide," her wingman radioed. "Yes," Amy agreed. "Make it count." They screamed toward the massive ship, dodging point defense fire. Amy targeted the gap in the shield she had discovered during her reconnaissance, that tiny, vulnerable spot near the engine ports. Her fighter carried the last of Paul Green's antimatter charges. She got within 100 meters before point defense finally tagged her fighter. The ship began to break apart around her, alarm screaming. With her last breath, Amy triggered the weapon release. The antimatter charge struck the dreadnought's exposed engine core. The explosion was visible from Earth, a brief new star in Jupiter's orbit. The dreadnought, pride of the Varathian fleet, died in seconds. The shockwave disabled a dozen nearby ships and sent debris flying through the alien formation. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Humanity lost half its remaining fleet at Jupiter. When the battle ended, Jake counted his surviving ships and felt his heart sink. They had less than 100 combat-capable vessels left. The Varathians had lost more ships in this one battle than in their last century of conquest, but they still had hundreds more. They could afford their losses. Humanity could not, yet something had changed. Jake saw it in the enemy's movements. They advanced more slowly now, more cautiously. They checked every shadow, scanned every asteroid. The Varathians had learned to fear what might be hiding in the dark. Back on Earth, Dr. Paul Green worked without sleep. The battle at Jupiter had proven his weapons could work, but they needed more. Something bigger. Something that would make the aliens think twice about approaching Earth. He pulled up his most classified project file, Project Hellfire. The concept was insane. Missiles that could dive through a star's corona, survive the heat and radiation, then emerge on the other side carrying a payload of weaponized stellar matter. The missiles would be like bullets fired from the sun itself. "It's never been tested," his assistant warned. "The heat alone would destroy any conventional missile." Paul grinned that mad scientist grin. "Then it's a good thing we stopped being conventional the moment those aliens showed up. Get me a trajectory to the sun. We're going to teach the Varathians about human ingenuity." In his flagship, Zarathek reviewed the battle reports and felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Doubt. The humans had lost the battle, but they had made the Varathians bleed. Every victory cost more ships, more time, more effort than the High Castellan had anticipated. He opened a secure channel to the Varathian High Council, sending a message that would take weeks to reach the Empire's core worlds. "The humans are not like other species," he reported. "They do not fear death. They do not respect superior force. They fight with a madness I have never encountered. Request additional reinforcements. This conquest will take longer than anticipated." The response, when it finally came, was not what he expected. The war had been raging for 3 months when the Varathians struck at New Terra. The colony was humanity's most distant settlement, located 15 light-years from Earth. 6,000 colonists had been building a new life there, farming alien soil and dreaming of the future. Those dreams ended when Varathian warships appeared in orbit. Maya Torres had been a mining engineer before the invasion. Now she crouched in the ruins of the colony's main settlement, clutching a rifle she barely knew how to use. Around her, other survivors huddled in the darkness, waiting for the aliens to hunt them down. "They're in the valley," someone whispered, searching house to house. Maya peered through a crack in the rubble. The Varathian soldiers moved in perfect formation, their armor gleaming in the alien sunlight. They were methodical and efficient, clearing buildings one by one. Anyone they found was taken prisoner or shot on sight. But the Varathians had made a mistake. They assumed New Terra would surrender quickly, like all the other colonies they had conquered. They did not understand that humans grew more dangerous when cornered. "Pass the word," Maya said quietly. "Tonight we hit their supply depot. No prisoners, no mercy." The guerrilla war on New Terra was brutal and desperate. The colonists had no military training and few weapons. But they knew the terrain and they knew how to improvise. They built bombs from mining explosives. They dug tunnel networks through the hills. They learned to move silently and strike without warning. The Varathians had never faced anything like it. In their empire, conquered species either served or died. The concept of ongoing resistance of a population that refused to be pacified was alien to them. They responded with increasing brutality, which only made the resistance fight harder. Back on Earth, the situation was deteriorating. The Varathian fleet had reached the inner solar system and was bombarding the lunar bases. Colonel Danny Harper commanded the defense of Tycho Base, the largest military installation on the moon. Danny had been born on the moon, part of the first generation of humans who had never set foot on Earth. He knew every tunnel, every chamber, every emergency exit in the base. That knowledge was the only thing keeping his forces alive. "Incoming," someone shouted, and Danny threw himself against the tunnel wall as the entire structure shook. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling. Somewhere in the distance, he heard the hiss of escaping atmosphere. The Varathians had been bombarding Tycho for 2 weeks straight. They wanted the base intact for their own use, so they used precision strikes rather than simply obliterating it from orbit. That caution gave Danny and his Marines a chance to fight back. "Section 7 is breached," a lieutenant reported. "Sealing emergency doors now." Danny checked his tactical display. They had lost another section of the base, but the Varathians would have to send ground troops to secure it. That meant close-quarters combat in the tunnels, where human desperation counted more than alien technology. "Fall back to Sector 4, Danny ordered. "Prep the surprise we left for them." The Varathians sent a battalion of soldiers into the captured section. They advanced cautiously, aware that humans tended to leave traps, but they found nothing, just empty corridors and abandoned equipment. That should have been their first warning. Danny waited until the enemy soldiers were deep in the complex, then triggered the demolition charges. The entire section collapsed, burying the Varathians under tons of lunar rock. It was a Pyrrhic victory. They had destroyed their own base to kill the enemy, but it bought them more time. Time was all that mattered now. Every day the lunar bases held was another day for Earth to prepare its defenses. While Danny fought on the moon, Agent Nicole Price was conducting a different kind of war. She had infiltrated a Varathian supply station by hiding in a captured human cargo ship. Now she crept through the alien corridors, searching for the station's communication hub. Nicole had volunteered for this mission knowing it was one way. Even if she succeeded in stealing the intelligence she was after, there was no escape plan. The Varathians controlled all the space around the station. She found the communication hub guarded by 2 alien soldiers. Nicole was not a trained assassin, but she had learned quickly. The knife was silent and the aliens died without raising an alarm. Inside the hub, she accessed the Varathian network. The data was encrypted, but human hackers had been studying captured alien technology for months. Nicole uploaded the decryption software and watched as files began to download. Military fleet positions, supply routes, communication protocols, and something else, something that made Nicole's blood run cold. Invasion plans for Earth, detailing exactly how the Varathians intended to break humanity's final resistance. She copied everything and prepared to transmit it back to Earth, knowing the transmission would give away her position. As she hit the send button, alarms began to wail throughout the station. Nicole smiled grimly and drew her weapon. If this was the end, she would take some aliens with her. Back on Earth, Dr. Paul Green received Nicole's intelligence data and immediately brought it to Admiral Jake Morrison. What they saw painted a grim picture. The Varathians were bringing their full extermination fleet to Earth, over 1,000 ships, enough firepower to crack a planet. "When?" Jake asked. 2 months, Paul said. "Maybe less." Jake stared at the tactical projections. Even with every trick humanity had learned, they could not win against those numbers. "Not with conventional weapons. What about Project Hellfire?" Jake asked. "Is it ready?" Paul hesitated. "The sun-diving missiles work. We've tested them. But Jake, there's another project. Something I've been developing in secret." He pulled up a new file labeled Nova Protocol. What am I looking at? Jake asked. A weapon that can destabilize a star, Paul said quietly. If we position the right devices in the right places, we can trigger a premature nova. It would destroy everything in the system, but it would also create a shockwave visible across half the galaxy. Jake felt his stomach turn. You're talking about destroying our own sun? I'm talking about having leverage, Paul corrected. If we can prove we have this capability, the Varathians might actually negotiate. What good is conquering Earth if there's no Earth left to conquer? That's insane. Yes, Paul agreed. But so is fighting an empire that spans hundreds of star systems. We're past the point of sane options, Admiral. We either find a way to make them afraid of us or we lose everything. Jake thought about Mars colony, vaporized without warning. He thought about New Terra fighting a hopeless guerrilla war. He thought about Danny Harper and his Marines buried alive in the lunar tunnels, still refusing to surrender. Build it, he said. But Paul, this stays between us. If the civilians find out we're considering this, they won't, Paul promised. But we need to test it, somewhere far away from Earth. Meanwhile, on New Terra, Maya Torres had become something she never imagined. A leader of the resistance. The survivors looked to her for orders, for hope, for reasons to keep fighting. She gave them all three. The Varathians think they've won, she told her fighters in their hidden cave base. They think we're beaten because they control the settlements and the sky. But this is our world. We know every hill, every valley, every place to hide, and we're going to teach them what it means to occupy human territory. The resistance had grown bolder. They sabotaged Varathian equipment, ambushed patrols, and freed prisoners. Every small victory cost lives, but it kept hope alive. One night, Maya's team intercepted a Varathian supply convoy. The aliens had grown careless, not expecting resistance this far from the main settlements. Maya and 20 fighters hit them fast and hard, using explosives and salvaged weapons. The convoy was destroyed in minutes. Among the cargo, they found something valuable, a communication device still active and connected to the Varathian military network. Maya contacted Earth immediately. This is New Terra Resistance. We're still here and we're still fighting. Tell everyone back home not to give up. If we can hold out here, you can hold out there. The message was broadcast across every human settlement and ship. The effect was electric. People who had been ready to despair found new strength. If 6,000 colonists could defy the Varathian Empire for 3 months, then Earth could hold out longer. Zarathek received reports about the New Terra situation with growing frustration. He had dedicated an entire occupation force to one minor colony, and they still could not pacify it. The humans refused to behave like conquered people. They refused to accept reality. Perhaps, his second-in-command suggested, we should simply exterminate the colony and move on. Zarathek considered it. The High Council wanted human slaves, but one colony was not worth this much effort and resources. He authorized the bombardment of New Terra from orbit. When the warning reached Maya, she gathered her people one last time. They're going to destroy the colony, she told them calmly. Everyone above ground will die. But we've got ships hidden in the deep caves, and we've got one last mission. She looked at her tired, battered fighters. We're going to hit every Varathian installation on this planet simultaneously. When they arrive to bombard us, they'll find their ground forces already destroyed. They can kill us, but they can't make us kneel. The final battle for New Terra lasted 6 hours. The resistance hit the... Admiral Jake Morrison stood before a holographic map of the galaxy, studying the glowing points that marked Varathian territory. For 6 months, humanity had been fighting a defensive war, bleeding and dying to protect their home. Now Jake was planning something different, something insane. He was going to take the fight to them. You can't be serious, President Linda Carter said when she heard the plan. We barely have enough ships to defend Earth. You want to split our forces and attack the enemy's territory? Yes, Jake said simply. Because if we don't, we lose anyway. The Varathians are bringing their extermination fleet. When it arrives, no amount of defense will save us. Our only chance is to make them reconsider whether Earth is worth the cost. He highlighted several star systems on the map. These are minor Varathian worlds, lightly defended, used as supply bases and staging areas. We hit them hard, free any enslaved populations, and broadcast the message across the Empire. Humans are not prey. We're predators, and if your attack fails, then we lose a few weeks earlier than we would have anyway, Jake said bluntly. But if it works, if we can inspire the other species the Varathians have conquered to rebel, we might just survive this. President Carter studied the battle plans for a long time. Finally, she nodded. Do it. And Jake? Come back alive. I'll do my best, Madam President. Jake took half of Earth's remaining fleet into Varathian space. They had captured enemy ships at Jupiter, and human engineers had learned to operate them. The fleet looked like a Varathian force which would let them get close before revealing their true identity. Commander Lucas Bennett led the advanced scouts. His stealth corvettes jumped ahead of the main fleet, gathering intelligence on enemy positions. What they found was encouraging. The Varathians had pulled most of their forces toward Earth, leaving their interior territory vulnerable. They're so confident in their strength, Lucas reported. They never considered someone might attack them. The first target was a supply depot in the Arcturus sector. It was a small facility, staffed by only a few hundred Varathians and serviced by thousands of enslaved alien workers. Jake's fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel right on top of it. The Varathian defenders had seconds to react before human weapons tore through their ships. The supply depot itself was left intact, but every Varathian military installation was destroyed. Jake ordered the enslaved workers freed and gave them a choice: fight with humanity or take ships and flee. Many chose to fight. A species called the Krell, reptilian beings who had been enslaved for 50 years, joined the fleet immediately. Their representative, a scarred warrior named Seth, met with Jake personally. "You are the humans," Seth said, his voice a harsh whisper. "We have heard stories. You are the ones who refuse to kneel." "That's us," Jake confirmed. "Will you fight with us?" "We will fight with anyone who opposes the Empire," Seth replied. "You have given us hope. That is more valuable than you know." The second target was a fortress world called Kepler 442. It was more heavily defended, with a full garrison of Varathian soldiers and orbital weapons platforms. Jake knew it would be a harder fight, but the symbolic value was worth the risk. Captain Amy Sullivan would have loved this mission, Jake thought as his fleet approached. The fortress world had no idea they were coming. The battle was fast and brutal. Human ships struck the orbital platforms while Lucas Bennett's corvettes landed troops on the planet's surface. The fighting lasted 3 days, but in the end, the fortress fell. Among the freed prisoners were humans, captured soldiers from the battles at Mars and Jupiter, held in Varathian detention facilities. When they saw Earth's flag flying over the fortress, many wept openly. "We thought you were all dead," one prisoner told Jake. "We thought Earth had fallen." "Earth still stands," Jake said firmly. "And we're coming for everyone the Varathians have taken from us." The victories continued. Jake's fleet hit 4 more systems in rapid succession, each time freeing enslaved populations and destroying Varathian infrastructure. The Empire's communication networks lit up with panicked messages. How were the humans this deep in Varathian territory? How had they become the hunters instead of the hunted? The answer terrified them. Desperation had made humanity dangerous. On the third liberated world, Jake broadcast a message across every communication channel the Varathians monitored. He wanted them to hear it. He wanted them to be afraid. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of Earth," he said calmly. "For 6 months you have attacked our people. You have destroyed our colonies. You have demanded we kneel before your empire. Now we answer. We do not kneel. We do not surrender. And we do not forgive. Every world you have conquered we will liberate. Every ship you send against us we will destroy. We are humanity, and we are coming for you." The message reached every corner of the Varathian Empire. Some dismissed it as empty bravado from a dying species, but others, those who had fought humans directly, felt a chill. They had seen what these creatures were capable of when cornered. Zarathek received the message aboard his flagship as he prepared for the final assault on Earth. The High Castellan had spent months fighting humanity, and he understood what others did not. These attacks on Varathian territory were not strategic victories. They were a message. The humans were saying, "If you destroy Earth, we will haunt your empire forever." "Recall the fleet," Zarathek ordered suddenly. His officers stared at him in shock. "Castellan, we are within striking distance of Earth. Victory is—" "There will be no victory," Zarathek interrupted. "Can you not see? Every world we leave undefended, the humans will attack. Every population we have enslaved will be freed. If we destroy Earth, the surviving humans will scatter across the galaxy and wage war on us for generations. The cost is too high. He sent an urgent message to the Varathian High Council explaining the situation. The humans had changed the equation. Conquering Earth was no longer worth the price. The response came quickly, and it was not what Zarathek expected. Empress Sorvana, supreme ruler of the Varathian Empire, had been watching the war with increasing interest. Unlike the military commanders, she saw the bigger picture. If humanity could resist so effectively, other species might try the same. The Empire's foundation was built on fear and the perception of invincibility. Humanity had shattered that perception. Continue the assault on Earth, Empress Sorvana commanded. Destroy the human homeworld completely. Leave no survivors. We will make them an example of what happens to those who defy the Empire. Zarathek read the orders with a sinking feeling. The Empress did not understand. Destroying Earth would not end the human threat. It would create martyrs and multiply the resistance 1,000-fold. But orders were orders. The High Castellan redirected the extermination fleet toward Earth and prepared for the final battle. Meanwhile, Commander Lucas Bennett made a discovery that would change everything. While scouting a major Varathian communication relay, his team intercepted data packets containing fleet movements and strategic plans. Among them was something incredible: the location of the Varathian homeworld. It's called Varathis Prime, Lucas reported to Jake. Their entire government is based there. Every major decision, every strategic order, it all comes from this one planet. Jake studied the coordinates. The homeworld was heavily defended, surrounded by layers of military installations and orbital fortresses. It would be suicide to attack it directly. Unless, how long would it take us to reach Varathis Prime? Jake asked. 2 weeks at maximum speed, Lucas calculated. But Admiral, we don't have the firepower to. We don't need to conquer it, Jake interrupted. We just need to threaten it. If we can get close enough to make them believe we might destroy their homeworld, they'll have to pull back from Earth. That's insane. Yes, Jake agreed, which is exactly why they won't expect it. He sent a message to President Carter on Earth explaining the plan. It was risky beyond measure. If it failed, humanity would lose both Earth and its last offensive fleet in one stroke. Carter's response was simple. Do what you must. Earth will hold as long as we can. Jake divided his forces one final time. Half would return to Earth to help with the defense. The other half, the fastest ships and the bravest volunteers, would go with him to Varathis Prime. This is likely a one-way trip, Jake told his crews honestly. We're going to the heart of enemy territory with no backup and no hope of reinforcement. Anyone who wants to return to Earth, I won't think less of you. Not a single ship left the formation. Seth and the other freed aliens volunteered to join the mission as well. You freed us, the Krell warrior said. Now we will help you free yourselves. As the fleet prepared to jump toward Varathis Prime, Jake stood alone in his quarters looking at a picture of Earth. Blue and green and beautiful, hanging in the void like a jewel. He thought about everyone who had died defending it. Amy Sullivan and her pilots, Maya Torres and the new Terra Resistance, Danny Harper and his Marines still fighting on the lunar bases, thousands of others whose names he would never know. We're coming home, Jake whispered to the picture. One way or another, we're ending this. The fleet jumped, and space twisted around them as they headed toward the heart of the Varathian Empire. On Earth, President Carter received word that the extermination fleet had. The Varathian extermination fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 1,500 warships, their weapons armed and ready, began the slow advance toward humanity's homeworld. This was not an invasion force. This was an execution squad. On Earth, alarms wailed across every continent. Colonel Danny Harper had survived the lunar siege and returned to help coordinate the planet's defense. He stood in the command center, watching the enemy fleet approach on the tactical displays. How long until they're in firing range? President Carter asked. 48 hours, Danny replied. Maybe less if they push their engines. Carter nodded slowly. She had barely slept in weeks, and it showed. And our forces? Every ship that can fly is in position. Every weapon we have is online. Every person who can fight is ready. Danny paused. Madam President, it's not enough. Not against those numbers. I know, Carter said quietly. But we'll make them pay for every meter. Dr. Green, is Nova Protocol ready? In his underground laboratory, Paul Green responded over the communication line. Yes, Madam President. If Earth falls, I can trigger it. The sun will go nova within hours. Nothing in this solar system will survive, including any Varathian ships here. That's the idea, Paul confirmed. They can kill us, but they can't have our world. Carter closed her eyes for a moment, thinking about the billions of people depending on her decisions. Then she opened them, resolve hardening her expression. Prepare to broadcast on all channels. If we're going to die, the galaxy will remember what we died for. Meanwhile, Admiral Jake Morrison and his strike fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in the Varathis Prime system. The Varathian homeworld lay ahead, a massive planet surrounded by rings of defense stations and patrol fleets. Sensors are lighting up, Lucas Bennett reported from his Corvette. They know we're here. Good, Jake said calmly. I want them to know. Open a channel to the planet. Within seconds, he was connected to the Varathian High Council. Empress Sorvana's face appeared on his screen, her features twisted with anger and contempt. You dare approach our homeworld? She demanded. Your species is about to be exterminated and you waste your last ships on this futile gesture? Futile. Jake smiled grimly. We're here to make you an offer, Empress. Call off your attack on Earth or we destroy Varathis Prime. Sorvana laughed, a harsh sound that held no humor. You have less than 200 ships. My homeworld is protected by 5,000. You cannot win this battle. You're right, Jake agreed. We can't win. But we can hurt you badly before we die. And more importantly, we brought something special. Dr. Green, if you would. Paul Green's voice came over the channel from Earth. Empress Sorvana, humanity has developed a weapon called Nova Protocol. It can destabilize a star and trigger a premature nova. Admiral Morrison's fleet carries several of these devices. If you do not withdraw from Earth immediately, he will use them on your son. The Empress's expression changed from contempt to shock. You're bluffing. No species would develop such a weapon. The cost is irrelevant when you're facing extinction, Jake interrupted. We tested it on an uninhabited system 3 days ago. Would you like to see the recordings? Lucas transmitted the data. The images showed a star beginning to destabilize, its corona expanding, energy readings spiking to impossible levels. The footage cut off before the actual nova, but the implications were clear. You're insane, Sorvana whispered. You would destroy your own son to spite us? Yes, Jake said simply. And we'll destroy yours too. That's what you don't understand about humanity, Empress. We don't fight to win. We fight so our enemies lose. If we go down, we're taking you with us. For the first time in her long reign, Empress Sorvana felt genuine fear. She had built an empire on the certainty that inferior species would always choose survival over defiance. But these humans were different. They would rather burn the galaxy than kneel. You are bluffing, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Then don't withdraw, Jake suggested. In 47 hours, your fleet will destroy Earth. And 1 minute later, every human ship in your system will activate Nova Protocol. Your homeworld, your council, your entire civilization's heart will die in fire. Test me, Empress. See if I'm bluffing. Back at Earth, the Varathian extermination fleet continued its approach. The human defenders watched them come, knowing these might be the last hours of their lives. President Carter broadcast her message across all frequencies, aimed not just at Earth but at every species in the galaxy that might be listening. This is President Linda Carter of Earth. Our planet is about to be attacked by an empire that demands submission from all species it encounters. They came to us with threats and demands. They destroyed our colonies and killed our people. They expected us to kneel. We refused. For 7 months we have fought them with everything we have. We have lost millions of people. We have sacrificed entire fleets. We have seen our bravest souls die defending what we believe in. But we have not knelt. If Earth falls today, remember us. Remember that humanity chose freedom over survival. Remember that we made the Varathian Empire bleed for every victory. Remember that we proved even the mightiest power can be resisted. To the other enslaved species of the galaxy, you are not alone. You are not powerless. Rise up, fight back. The Empire is not invincible. We have proven that. And to the Varathians, you may destroy our world, but you cannot destroy our spirit. Every species you have conquered will hear how we fought. They will remember our defiance, and one day your empire will fall, brought down by the same spirit that made humanity refuse to kneel. We are Earth. We are humanity, and we will not go quietly into the dark. The message was broadcast on repeat, echoing across the galaxy. On 1,000 enslaved worlds, people heard it and felt something they had not felt in years: hope. On Varathis Prime, Empress Sorvana listened to Carter's message and felt the foundation of her empire begin to crack. The Admiral was right. Even if they destroyed Earth, the humans had already won. They had shown every conquered species that resistance was possible. "High Castellan Zarathek," she said over the command channel. "Status of the Earth assault fleet? 30 minutes from firing range, Your Majesty," Zarathek reported. He was leading the extermination fleet personally, determined to see this war ended. Sorvana looked at Jake Morrison on her screen. The human admiral watched her calmly, his finger hovering over a control that could end both their civilizations. "You have won," she said finally, the words bitter in her mouth. "Not the war, but this moment. High Castellan, cease your advance. Hold position." On his flagship, Zarathek could not believe what he was hearing. "Your Majesty, we are minutes from—" "I said hold position," Sorvana snapped. "The humans have a doomsday weapon aimed at our homeworld. If we destroy Earth, they destroy us. We have reached an impasse." Jake exhaled slowly. He had been bluffing about having multiple Nova Protocol devices at Varathis Prime. They had exactly one, barely functional, and there was no guarantee it would work. But the Empress didn't know that. "Wise choice, Your Majesty," Jake said. "Now let's talk terms." The negotiation that followed took 6 hours. Neither side trusted the other, and both held weapons that could destroy civilizations. But slowly, carefully, they reached an agreement. The Varathian fleet would withdraw from Earth's solar system immediately. All human prisoners would be returned. The Varathians would recognize Earth's independence and sovereignty over its existing colonies. In return, humanity would not use Nova Protocol on any inhabited system. They would withdraw from Varathian space and cease attacks on Imperial territory. It was not peace. It was a mutual agreement not to destroy each other. "This war has cost my empire greatly," Sorvana said. 27 ships destroyed, 3 colonies lost, and worst of all, you have inspired rebellion among our subject species. "Good," Jake said. "Maybe that will teach you to stop enslaving people." "Perhaps," Sorvana admitted. "Or perhaps we will simply be more careful in the future. But Earth has earned its freedom, Admiral. Do not make us regret granting it." "We won't attack you again," Jake promised. "Unless you attack us first. Then all bets are off." The Varathian fleet withdrew. Across Earth, people emerged from shelters and bunkers, unable to believe they had survived. The celebrations that followed lasted for days, but they were tempered by grief for the millions who had died. President Carter addressed the planet one final time. "We have won our independence, but the cost has been terrible. Mars colony is gone. New Terra is a ruin. Millions of our people are dead. But we are still here. Earth still stands, and we have proven that humanity will never kneel to any power, no matter how mighty. In the coming years, we will rebuild. We will mourn our dead and honor their sacrifice. We will become stronger, so that no empire ever threatens us again. We have learned a harsh lesson. The galaxy is not a friendly place. But we have also taught a lesson. Humanity is not easy prey." Admiral Jake Morrison returned to Earth a hero, but he felt no joy in it. He had led thousands to their deaths. He had gambled with the survival of his species. The weight of those decisions would haunt him forever. He visited the memorial wall where Amy Sullivan's name was carved, along with Maya Torres, Nicole Price, and thousands of others. Someone